Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the entire grammar section from an official digital SHSAT practice exam. This practice exam comes from the Department of Education, which are the same people that make the actual SHSAT you're going to be taking in November. So this is the closest thing we can get to a real digital SHSAT. When you log on to your exam in November of 2025, you'll be greeted with this homepage. You'll press the next arrow and you'll begin your test. Because we're going to go over the grammar section, I'm going to quickly skip ahead to number 47, which is where it begins. Okay, so here we are. English Language Arts, Revising and Editing Part A. The grammar section is split into two parts. Part A will give you a passage and you'll have to correct that passage for further clarity. And then Part B will give you standalone paragraphs or sentences where you're going to be fixing individual grammar mistakes. So let's get into it. All right, so here we're starting off Part A. Again, we're going to always be given a passage, and our goal here isn't to make the grammar better, it's to make the ideas flow better. So my advice is always to read the passage first. So the title of this passage is The Benefits of Indoor Plants. It says that in an age of endless media content, it's easy to see why people might prefer to stay inside. According to a study sponsored by the Environmental Protection Agency, Americans spend an average of 87% of their time indoors. Scientists say that this separation between people and nature puts people at risk for physical and psychological issues. During the process of photosynthesis, plants convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and remove many harmful toxins from the air. Spending prolonged periods of time indoors, away from plants, deprives people of these benefits. Air that is not regularly detoxified can lead to a condition known as sick building syndrome. This disorder first came to light in the 1970s when many office workers in the United States began to complain of unexplained flu-like symptoms. Researchers determined the cause to be volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. VOCs are harmful chemicals that are emitted by everyday objects such as carpet, furniture, cleaning products, and computers. The NASA Clean Air and Study Act found a simple way to remove a significant number of VOCs within a 24-hour period: add plants to indoor spaces. Adding plants to indoor spaces has psychological benefits too. Research has long linked time spent in natural environments with increased energy and feelings of contentment. While being outdoors is an excellent option for improving a person's mental health, recent research has indicated that encountering natural elements while indoors can also help. To experience the maximum benefit of natural elements, experts suggest placing at least one live plant per 100 square feet of home or office space. Connecting with nature, even just by being near an outdoor plant, is a significant factor in a person's well-being. Sitting in front of an electronic screen all day isn't natural, and today's workers need to get up and get outdoors. Richard Ryan, a psychology professor at the University of Rochester, puts it in this way: nature is something within which we flourish, so having it be a more part of our lives is critical, especially when we live and work in inbuilt environments. All right, so this entire passage didn't take that long to read. I always suggest that you read it, and I always suggest that you summarize it. So this passage is about bringing plants indoors to expose people to nature. Okay, why? Because sitting indoors for too long, not being surrounded by greenery, number one, makes you sick and also makes you a little bit depressed. You're surrounded by volatile organic compounds, point number one, and then point number two, we literally need to be in nature to feel happy, so being away from it makes us a little bit miserable. All right, so this first question is going to ask, which sentence should follow sentence 3 to best introduce the topic of this passage? So again, the point of this section of the test is to get you to increase the quality of writing. We have this passage right here. Now your job is to make this passage better by strengthening the ideas, the transitions, by adding more details, so on and so forth. So in this case, what we're doing here is we're strengthening the introduction because we're adding another sentence after sentence 3. So this is sentence 3. Okay, it says that scientists say that this separation between people and nature puts people at a risk for physical and psychological issues. Okay, and we want to add a sentence after that to introduce the overall topic of the passage. Now, we already said the overall topic was people need to bring plants indoors to feel better and feel more productive. Okay, so let's look at which answer choice summarizes the text. A says placing plants in homes and offices can provide a healthy bridge between nature and the outdoors. I don't see a problem with this answer choice, so I'm going to keep it in mind. B says it's important for people to realize that they need to spend more time near plants, whether indoors or out in nature. Now, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to eliminate this answer. I'm going to eliminate this answer choice because the point of this passage isn't to get people to go outside, it's to get people to bring plants indoors. Nowhere in this text do they say we should all go outside, right? The main chunk of this text, all of the findings, all of the quotes, all of the figures point to people bringing plants indoors. It doesn't say that people need to go outside and enjoy nature there. We want to bring nature into the office. So this would be a bad choice because we're introducing an idea that's not really relevant to our text. Remember that the sentence that comes after the last sentence in the introduction is going to be the thesis or the main idea. So we want this new sentence to literally summarize everything that we say in here. All right, let's see if choice C is any better. For their personal health and well-being, people need to spend more time outdoors or bring the outdoors in. Okay, also okay, right? I'm not hating this choice. Finally, choice D says individuals with little connection to nature can experience illness, depression, and high levels of stress. Sure, the text did talk about this, but is that the main focus of the text? Absolutely not. The main focus of the text is to get people to bring plants in. Okay? So, over here, we're choosing between A and C, right? C says for their personal health and well-being, people need to spend more time outdoors or bring the outdoors in. Choice A says placing plants in homes and offices can provide a healthy bridge between the nature and the indoors. The reason why the correct answer here will be A is because C introduces something that's not really stated in the text. Choice C introduces that for people's health, they need to spend more time outdoors or bring the outdoors in. Now, I agree with this part. People need to bring the outdoors in. People need to bring plants into their offices. This was a big idea that we talked about here. But we never talked about people. We never tried to push people to go outside more. It was never discussed as a viable solution to, health problems to just go outside. This entire text and even the title is called The Benefits of Indoor Plants. We're talking about bringing nature inside to benefit people. We're not forcing people to go outside, which is why choice C, even though it looks like a very tempting choice, that's technically going to be the wrong answer because that's not what this text is about. This question will 100% be on your SHSAT. They will ask you to add a sentence after the last sentence in the introduction. Your job is to match the sentence that best summarizes the text. That is how you approach these problems. The last sentence in your introduction is your thesis. Your thesis will act as a summary of what your text talks about. Our text talks about indoor plants. Choice A summarizes what the text talks about by talking about bringing indoor plants into the office. All right, next question. Here they ask us which transition word or phrase should be added to the beginning of sentence 5 to emphasize the relationships between sentences 4 and 5. So how can sentences have a relationship? Well, sentences can have a relationship if they build on one another, if they contradict one another, if they're giving more detail or more clarity one sentence to another. So the way that we can kind of highlight those relationships are with transition words. For example, if I had a sentence that said, Jared really likes to eat ice cream, and the second sentence is Jared is lactose intolerant, well, that second sentence is going to give more detail to the first. And in this case, we can use the transition word unfortunately to kind of solidify that story. So Jared likes eating ice cream. Unfortunately, Jared is lactose intolerant, right? So these transition words can help solidify the ideas, right? In this case, eating ice cream is a positive thing, but we want to introduce a negative thing, which is why we would use unfortunately in that case, all right? Again, an example. In this case, we want to bridge the gap between sentence 4 and 5. So let's read sentence 4. During the process of photosynthesis, plants convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and remove many harmful toxins from the air. So this is our first sentence. And our second sentence says, spending prolonged periods of time indoors away from plants deprives people of these benefits, okay? So what could be the relationship here? Well, let's look at the answer choices. Maybe we'll get a better idea. So the first answer choice says, as a result. Well, let's plug as a result into the sentence, okay? Whenever they ask you to replace a word or introduce a transition word, I always recommend, in your head, read that second sentence as if you put in that transition word, as if, as a result, is how sentence 5 actually starts. Okay, so let's read it. During the process of photosynthesis, plants convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and remove many harmful toxins from the air. As a result, spending prolonged periods of time indoors away from plants deprives people of their benefits. As a result is a transition word used to indicate a cause and effect relationship. There is no cause and effect relationship here. Sentence 4 talks about photosynthesis. Sentence 5 talks about how people spending more time away from plants get deprived of the benefits of plants. Does photosynthesis and feeling sick and being indoors have a relationship? Not a cause and effect relationship, right? Just because a plant photosynthesizes does not mean that you will feel sad and sick if you're not next to a plant. As a result, would would be used differently in this case, right? I'll give you an example of when we use as a result. Biking is known to have many health benefits. As a result, Jared has started biking to try and become more healthy, right? That has a cause and effect relationship, right? Jared read that biking is a good way to lose weight. As a result, Jared has now started to bike more often in order to lose the weight he gained from eating so much ice cream, right? That's a cause and effect relationship. Someone read something, and because they read something, they chose to do something. In this case, these two events are independent of one another. Plants photosynthesizing and you feeling sick have nothing to do with one another. Plants removing harmful toxins and you deciding to spend your time indoors have nothing to do with one another, okay? So as a result here, does not work, okay? The same thing also doesn't work is in contrast. This choice is also false, okay? Let's think about it. During the process of photosynthesis, plants convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and remove many harmful toxins from the air. In contrast, spending prolonged periods of time indoors away from plants deprives people of these benefits. Again, what are we contrasting? To contrast something is to compare something. Is it a fair comparison to compare photosynthesis to your choice to stay indoors? No, those are unrelated. Photosynthesis is something that a plant does to generate food for itself. Spending time indoors, well, that's just your own choice. So in order for something to be in contrast to something or to another event, it has to be kind of opposed to it, right? The two things have to be related and you have to choose different approaches. I'll give an example, right? Let's say that Jared and James both want to lose weight. James likes to run on the treadmill because he read that running on the treadmill burns 60% more calories. In contrast, James disagrees, in contrast, Jared disagrees with James's choice because he thinks that running on a treadmill burns less calories, right? So again, in contrast is used when the subject of the two sentences is related. In this case, photosynthesis and spending times indoors is not related, okay? Primarily is used to add more details to the previous sentence. Sentence number 5 builds on sentence number 4. It does not provide more details, right? If we added primarily here, that would mean that sentence 5 is talking more about photosynthesis or adding more details about photosynthesis, which in this case it isn't. What does happen here is sentence 4 talks about something positive. Sentence 4 introduces the fact that photosynthesis can release things that are really good for us. Sentence 5 says, well, people miss out on these good things because they tend to be out inside instead of outside with plants. So when we're comparing something really good with something really bad that happens, we use the word unfortunately, right? Unfortunately makes perfect sense here because unfortunately, spending prolonged periods of time indoors puts you away from these benefits, right? We have these wonderful things called plants which filter our air. Unfortunately, there are people who spend long time away from these plants and don't get their benefits, okay? Which is why the proper transition phrase here has to be unfortunately, all right? None of the other ones make sense. I hope I made that clear. All right. Over here, we ask which sentence could best follow sentence 13 to support the ideas in the third paragraph. So let's look at the third paragraph here. This is paragraph 1, 2, and 3. Adding plants to indoor spaces has psychological benefits too. Research has long linked time spent in natural environments with increased energy and feeling of contentment. While being indoors is an excellent choice for improving a person's mental health, recent research has indicated that encountering natural elements while indoors can also help. To experience the maximum benefit of natural elements, experts suggest placing at least one live plant per 100 square feet of home or office space. So in this case, the idea that we're trying to support here is that bringing plants indoors will benefit the way that people think and the way that people feel and the way that they feel motivated, right? It increases productivity, it increases well-being, and it makes people happier, right? So which one of these figures or which one example supports that idea. All right, so let's look at choice D. According to a study that was conducted in 2003, plants can reduce the amount of noise that people can perceive in indoor spaces with hard surfaces, just as adding carpet can make a room seem quieter. Now, this entire paragraph, does it talk about noise? No, it doesn't talk about noise. What that paragraph talks about is plants increasing well-being and increasing productivity. It talks nothing about plants reducing noise. So me adding a detail about, oh, by the way, if you put plants in a room, it'll make the room quieter, has nothing to do. This will actually distract the reader from the message here, right? Because it'll start making them think. Making them think about noise rather than making them think how good plants are to bring indoors, okay? Choice C says, in fact, one recent study suggested that people who are routinely exposed to natural elements seem to increase their compassion for others, perhaps because that exposure generates compassion for the environment in which they live. Again, is this paragraph about increasing compassion for others? No, it's not. It's about increasing productivity and well-being. So just because you feel more compassionate to others and your coworkers, that doesn't make my argument here any clearer, right? I'm not trying to argue that plants will make you a kinder person. I'm trying to argue that plants will make you a more productive and happier person, okay? So, C doesn't seem to be the strongest choice, but I won't eliminate it yet. All right. B says, specifically, a study suggests that one well-known hotel is popular among guests because its owners has made significant investment in landscaping and indoor plants. I'm going to stop you right there. Is any point of this passage ever going to talk about hotels? You guys should all be screaming no. This does not even mention hotels. So adding an example with a hotel here only distracts from our point. All right, finally, we look at choice A. A global study of 7,600 workers from 16 countries revealed that employees who worked in spaces with natural elements, such as indoor plants, were more creative and productive than employees who worked in spaces without natural elements. This is going to be the answer, right? We talk about productivity. We have specific numbers, which makes this a really good figure. This makes it a good example because we have direct numbers, and then we have a cause and effect relationship. Having plants indoors causes people to be more productive. That is the relationship we wanted to show. All right, next. This asks us which sentence presents ideas irrelevant to the topic of the passage and should be deleted. So we're looking for sentences that do not belong. The first sentence that they say does not belong is sentence 11. It says that adding plants to indoor spaces has psychological benefits too. Now, this is from the paragraph that we were just looking at. Does this add to a relevant detail or is it irrelevant? Well, I would say that it is relevant because this is the topic sentence for this paragraph. This introduces what we're going to talk about. This entire passage or this entire paragraph talks about how adding plants makes you feel happier. Feeling happy is a psychological benefit, right? So this is actually quite relevant because it's going to introduce to the readers what we're arguing in this paragraph, and that's feeling content, right? That's encouraging people to be more productive. So this gives us a sneak peek and an introduction to what we're going to talk about here. So that's actually very relevant. So it cannot be choice A. All right. Choice B says sentence 14 is relevant. All right. And 14 says to experience the maximum benefit of natural elements, experts suggest placing at least one live plant per 100 square feet of home or office space. Okay. Now, is this relevant or irrelevant? Well, let's look at what the sentence before it says. It said that while being outdoors is an excellent option for improving a person's mental health, recent research has indicated that encountering natural elements while indoors can also help. So here we just said that, yeah, going outside is awesome, but you can also bring the outdoors inside. And then 14 literally told you how to do that. So here the paragraph where the author is suggesting to bring the nature inside, and then the next sentence is telling you how much nature to bring inside. Well, just one plant per 100 square feet. So yes, sentence 14 is relevant because it's giving us a guide as to how to bring nature indoors, which is what this paragraph wanted the reader to do, to bring the natures indoors, okay? Number 15 says, choice C says sentence 15 is relevant. Let's read that. 15 says that connecting with nature, just by being near an indoor plant is a significant factor in a person's well-being, okay? Is this relevant? Well, kinda, yeah, it is relevant because this is what we have been saying for the entire passage. Just being around a plant is good for you, okay? So I'm going to say that sentence 15 is relevant because this is, again, introducing or acting as a topic sentence, which is a relevant topic sentence. This is something that we're going to heavily discuss in this paragraph, right? So that leaves us with sentence 16 as the only choice to be irrelevant, and let's see why. 16 says, sitting in front of an electronic screen all day isn't natural, and today's workers need to get up and get outdoors. All right, now we can see how this is irrelevant because nowhere in this passage do we talk about sitting in front of computer screens. Nowhere in this passage did we talk about being in front of a screen is bad for you. We said that being away from plants is bad for you, but we never talked about screens. We never talked about computers. So randomly introducing computers here in a passage that's trying to get people to bring the nature that's outside them indoors with them kind of throws us off. And also, this sentence is telling us to get up and get outdoors. But the rest of the passage is telling us not to go outside, but to bring plants inside, bring the outdoors in. So again, that kind of goes against the whole message here, which is why 16 is going to be the irrelevant passage or irrelevant sentence. All right. Finally, it asks us which concluding sentence should follow sentence 17 to best support the information presented in the passage. So we've already had a topic sentence and a thesis that we added all the way here with the first problem, right? We already know that the sentence and the main idea of this passage is that people should introduce more indoor plants to their environment. Now, instead of introducing this in a thesis statement or kind of a topic sentence, we want to conclude this passage, right? So how can we do that? So let's look at the answers, right? Because indoor plants absorb the carbon dioxide in our air and release the oxygen that we breathe, they are vital to our wholeness and wellness. Remember, when you add a sentence to the last sentence of your passage, this is what is going to strike the readers the most, right? This is what the readers are going to take home as their message. Do we want the readers to go home understanding that plants absorb harmful stuff and release oxygen? No. In this passage, which talks about the benefits of indoor plants, we want people to go away knowing that bringing plants indoors is beneficial. So even though sentence or this sentence is true, right? We kind of mentioned this in the text. It's not what the text is about. So I don't want my reader to go home with this feeling and with this message, okay? B says that experts say that adding a Boston fern or spider plant or an aloe vera plant is a good place to start if you want to begin to incorporate nature into your office, okay? So again, let's think about this, right? Are we trying to suggest them to bring nature into our home or office? Yeah, right? Do we kind of need that extra detail here? Maybe no, right? So let's put that on the back burner, right? Let's look at choice C. C says more people should consider bringing natural elements inside to improve general wellness and reverse some of the negative effects of an indoor-centered society. This is also pretty good. This is also kind of restating what I've been telling you guys this passage is about, right? So let's keep that into running as well. And let's look at choice D. Choice D says, as one study has confirmed, houseplants are a wise investment because they can remove almost 90% of the toxins in the air within the span of 24 hours. Again, this passage is about bringing plants not only into households but also into the office. So giving our readers this as the take-home message kind of reduces the point that I was trying to make here, because my point is about bringing plants not only home but also into your workplaces, right? So choice D is wrong because it only talks about households. So now, which concludes the text better, B or C? And I'll ask you guys this: is this a persuasive piece? Is this piece trying to persuade you to bring plants indoors? And the answer is yes, it is, right? It is trying to push people to bring the outdoors in. So if you are trying to persuade people to get more plants into their homes and into their offices, are you going to conclude by giving them an example of a plant that they can bring into their home? Or are you going to restate that more people should consider bringing in natural elements to improve their wellness? Well, you're going to restate what you want. You want people to bring plants indoors. So having choice C as your final concluding statement solidifies your argument here, right? Choice B is literally an example, right? It's experts say. This is an example. This is extra evidence that we can use as a suggestion. The point of this passage is not a suggestion. The point of this passage is to convince you that plants are good and plants would make an excellent addition to your home or your office. So, by adding choice C as the final sentence in this passage, you're sending the reader home with that message. That message that more people should consider bringing natural elements inside to improve general wellness and to reverse some of the negative effects of an indoor-centered society. Choice C touches upon everything the passage touched upon. We said it touches upon how being inside for a long time is unhealthy. It talks about how we need to bring outdoor elements inside, and it talks about how bringing outdoor elements inside improves wellness while also making it into an argument. This solidifies every single paragraph that we have. Choice B only offers a kind of solution. It does not restate everything we said. So again, when you're choosing the sentence, when you're choosing the last sentence of the introduction and the last sentence of the conclusion, you want to choose a sentence that summarizes everything said. Choice C summarizes everything that was said, all right? So now we press next. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to revising and editing part B. So grammar has two parts. The first part, we shinied up and kind of fixed that passage. And now we're going to look at individual questions that aren't related to a passage. And instead of making their ideas clearer, we're going to be fixing grammar mistakes there. So here I'll talk about more grammar rules than test-taking strategies, all right? So we're going to press next, and we start this section. Whenever you start a section, you can always go back, so don't worry about that. We can always go back and change your answers here, and it even keeps your highlighting and annotations here, which is awesome, right? So we'll press next, It asks us which sentence of the paragraph should be revised to correct a vague pronoun. So what is a vague pronoun? Let's look at something that's vague is something that's not clear, and a pronoun is kind of a word that we use to refer to someone, right? So if I come up to you and I'm like, she did really bad on her math test, that's an example of a vague pronoun because you don't know who she is, right? If I was talking about this person, Alexa, have you recently seen Alexa? She did really bad on her math test. Because I introduced Alexa in the previous sentence, technically it's no longer a vague pronoun to refer to her as she, because I know who she is. But randomly dropping, yeah, she did bad on her math test without knowing you're talking about Alexa is a vague pronoun because we don't know who you're talking about. You're just dropping a pronoun without an actual name. So that's what we're going to be looking for in this text somewhere. So sentence 1 says, Eliza and Brianna have been singing in their school chorus since they were in 4th grade. All right, let's look at the pronouns here. They is a pronoun. Is this pronoun vague? No. Who are they? Well, we're talking about Eliza and Brianna. So that's who they are. I'm not confused yet. That means that sentence 1 does not have a vague pronoun. All right, scanning sentence 2. The girls always sing a duet at the talent show, and they make turns singing the national anthem before the school sporting events. All right, let's look at some of the possible pronouns we can have here, okay? So we have another they, okay? And then we also talk about the girls. So this is also fine, right? In the last sentence, we introduced two girls, Eliza and Brianna. So when we say the girls once more, we're actually talking about Eliza and Brianna, multiple girls, the girls, okay? This is good. As long as you introduce the name officially one sentence ago, you can use a vague pronoun to refer to it. That's the expiration date. You can no longer use a vague pronoun if the name or the proper noun was introduced more than a sentence ago. So if 2 sentences has passed without you mentioning their names, Eliza and Brianna, and then you just randomly dropped they take turns singing in the national anthem, that would be vague because I don't have a name to reference, okay? In this case, calling them the girls is fine. I know who you're talking about. If the direct thing you're referencing is a sentence before, that's good. Finally, saying they here also makes sense. They is referencing the girls who were officially introduced a sentence before. Okay? Finally, sentence 3. It says, outside of school, she also sings in a choir made up of young and old members of her community. Here I have a problem. Who is she? We have 2 girls, remember? We have Eliza and Brianna. Saying she is singular. That's talking about one person. Well, I have a sentence about 2 people, right? Eliza and Brianna. So I don't know who she is. I don't know who she's referring to. And I don't know who we're talking about. Who are her community members, right? Eliza's community members or Brianna's community community members. Which one? Which girl are we talking about? So this is an example of a vague pronoun because it leads to confusion as to who you're referring to. So that means that sentence 3 is the correct answer. All right, sentence 3 has the vague pronoun, and that's what we're gonna have to choose. Okay. Sentence 4, both girls hope that they will continue to sing for many more years. Who are both the girls? Eliza and Brianna. We've introduced that already. That's good. Who are they? Well, they refers to both girls. There's only 2 girls in this entire sentence, so that's not vague. We know it's Eliza and Brianna. The issue is when we talk about 2 girls and then we only reference one of them, we don't know which one. So that becomes vague and a vague pronoun because she is a pronoun. Next. All right, which revision corrects the error in sentence structure in the paragraph? All right, and then here, notice the changes that we're making. Okay, what we're doing is we're changing at the underlined area. Okay, and essentially we're changing commas into periods. We're changing periods into semicolons, commas into periods, and periods into commas. So whenever you're changing punctuation, specifically a period into a comma, or a comma into a period, or a period into a semicolon, we know that this is probably going to do with, obviously, punctuation, but with run-on sentences. Most likely, that's going to deal with run-on sentences, okay? The only time that you need to introduce a period into a sentence, or introduce a period between 2 sentences, is if you have a run-on. So what is a run-on? A run-on is when you have 2 independent clauses connected by either no punctuation, or with a comma, okay? An independent clause is a complete thought. So if I were to write 2 whole sentences and I don't separate them with a period or a semicolon, that's grammatically incorrect, okay? So you must connect 2 sentences with a period or a semicolon, right? Connecting them with just a comma is no good, okay? So let's look at these answer choices, right? Choice A says that this, let's see if I can highlight it. So it's saying that this comma here is incorrectly placed and should be a period. The only time that you're replacing a comma for a period is to correct a run-on sentence, right? That means that whatever is to the left of this comma is a full sentence, and whatever's to the right of this comma also is a full sentence. If this is true, if there's full sentences to the left and the right, then this comma has created a run-on sentence where 2 sentences are combined into one and are not separated properly by either a period or a semicolon, okay? So let's look at the case. So my advice, look at the sentence to the left and look at the sentence to the right. On the left, it says that the land on Earth has not always been separated into 7 continents. Is this a sentence? Yes, it is. Here's my surefire sentence test. Think in your head, if you came up to your friend and you said that to them, would they understand what you're saying without previous context? If you have a complete sentence, yes, they will understand, right? In this case, if I came up to my friend and I said, hey, did you know the land on Earth has not always been separated into 7 continents? Will they understand what I'm saying? Absolutely they will, right? Yeah. I'm saying that at some point on Earth, the land wasn't arranged the way it is right now. So this is a complete sentence. Yes, we have a subject, a verb, and an object, right? We're talking about the land on Earth, how it hasn't been separated, that's my verb, and it has not been separated into oceans, that's my object, okay? So again, another way of testing for if you have a sentence is if you have a subject, aka the thing that is going to do the verb is the action, in this case being separated, and the object is receiving the action, right? So what are we separating it into? We're separating it into continents, okay? So this is a sentence. Let's look at the possible sentence on the right. It says that at one time, a massive supercontinent known as Pangaea covered 1/3 of the Earth's surface. Now, is this a complete sentence? Yes, it is. If I came up to my friend and said, hey, did you know that at one time a massive supercontinent known as Pangaea covered 1/3 of the Earth's surface, they will know what I'm saying. They won't look at me like I'm crazy. They'll say, okay, fine, cool fact, man. I guess that, yeah, I didn't know that at some point a supercontinent called Pangaea covered 1/3 of the Earth's surface. So this is also a complete sentence. If you want to do subject, verb, object, then we know that the subject here is a massive supercontinent Pangaea. The verb, the action it's doing, it's covering something, and the object, the thing that's receiving the action or the thing that's being covered, is 1/3 of the Earth's surface. So this has a subject, a verb, and an object, and it's a complete sentence. The issue here is that I have a full sentence, another full sentence, and they're separated by a comma. This is never legal. Grammatically speaking, this must be changed into a period, or it must be changed into a semicolon, or you need to use fanboys. If you have an and before it comes a comma, or if you have for and before it is a comma, nor before it is a comma, but before it is a comma, or yet and so, placing a comma before these words creates what we call a period. So if you had comma and, that's the same thing as putting a period down. In this case, we don't have one of these fanboys or one of these conjunctions with or before that comma. So as a result, this is grammatically incorrect. And the way that we correct this is by changing that comma into a period or into a semicolon, or by attaching one of these conjunctions in front of it to turn it into a period. So that's why choice A is the correct answer, okay? Remember, with choice B, okay, changing a period into a semicolon is never going to be the right answer, right? 99% of the times this won't be the right answer because a period and a semicolon do the same thing grammatically when they're in the middle of a paragraph, okay? The only difference with a period and a semicolon grammatically is that you cannot end a paragraph with a semicolon. You must end a paragraph with a period, okay? Because we're in the middle of the paragraph, it doesn't matter here. It's the same thing. So choice B just doesn't make sense, okay? Choice C would introduce a fragment, okay? If I put a period here, remember that a period can only connect two full sentences. So a period cannot connect two incomplete sentences, and it cannot complete a full sentence to an incomplete one. If I put a period here, the sentence to the left of it is a sentence, but the text to the right of this period, much of which were in Earth's southern hemisphere, is incomplete. So if I came up to my friend and I talked to them and I said, hey, much of which were incomplete, or sorry, much of which were in Earth's southern hemisphere, they would look at me like I'm crazy because they don't know what was in Earth's southern hemisphere. This is missing a subject, right? So as a result, because it's missing a subject, it's not a complete sentence. It's what we call a fragment, and periods cannot connect fragments to sentences. That's the job of a comma, which was here beforehand. So choice C would introduce an issue, and then choice D also introduces a run-on, right? This period separates two sentences, okay? Putting a comma here would then make a comma connect two full sentences, which is not grammatically correct. All right. So here, we're locating a pair of revisions to correct the error in the paragraph, all right? Sentence number 1 says, Yelena, Michael, and Malcolm loved making pancakes with their granddad on Saturday mornings, okay? And this choice A says, in sentence 1, you should delete the comma after Yelena. Now, deleting the comma after Yelena reads, Yelena, Michael, and Malcolm love making pancakes. First of all, how many people are we talking about? Are we talking about 3 people or 2? Well, this comma tells us that we're talking about 3 people. If I remove this comma, then the sentence would read Yelena, Michael, and Malcolm. So we're using Yelena's last name, which is Michael, but we're not using Malcolm's last name. So that doesn't make sense. It's clear that Yelena, Michael, and Malcolm are a part of a list. And when you're separating items or people who are listed, you use a comma in between. So this is the first item in our list, this is the second item, and this is the third item. So getting rid of one of these commas disrupts our list because in between every unique portion of your list, you must have a comma to separate it. Removing this comma makes it seem like Yelena Michael is one person when it isn't. And if Yelena Michael was one person, then you would have to put Malcolm's last name as well in this list, okay? So choice 1 has to be wrong because we're messing with that list, all right? Sentence 2, Yelena's job is to open the box and pour the pancake mix into the bowl, slowly adding water, eggs, and melted butter and blueberries, okay? Sentence 2, it says we should change is to are, and we should delete the comma after bowl. So Yelena's job are to open the box. Does that sound correct to you? No, it doesn't sound correct to me, right? Just sounding it out in your head, saying it out loud, you know that your job is to do something. Your job aren't something. Saying my job are to explain grammar to you, that doesn't make sense. Why does it make sense? Well, are, when we use the word are, when we're talking about multiple things, right? Are is what we call plural. So whenever we use are in a sentence, that's when we're referring to multiple things. Is, we use is when we're referring to singular things. So are is plural, is singular. So when we're talking about, or when we're looking at this sentence, we're talking about Yelina's job. Job is singular. There's just one job. So when we're describing her job, we're going to use a singular word, is. We're not going to use something like are, which is plural. Now, if this sentence says Yelina's jobs, then we would use are. And if I say it out loud, Yelina's jobs are to do what? That sounds so much better than saying Yelina's job are, right? Yelina's job are to do many things. Yelina's job is to do many things. Saying is makes that sound so much better in our ears because deep down, even though we might not know the reason grammatically, we speak English so much that we can pick up on these differences, right? We are all good at grammar deep down because we speak English every day in our life. We just can't really explain why certain things sound off. In this case, this sounds off because in our head, our brain registers job as singular, and in our brain, we're like, okay, job is singular, so automatically I should describe it with the word is instead of are. So again, choice B introduces an issue instead of fixing it because we're changing a singular to plural. All right. Choice C says, change it is to they are and delete the comma after smooch. So let's look at choice 3. Michael uses a wooden spoon to vigorously stir the mixture until it is smooth. Okay, so again, what is Michael doing? Michael is stirring the mixture. All right, now a mixture, is that singular or plural? That's singular, right? So the mixture is singular. If I have many mixture, that becomes mixtures. So because we're talking about one mixture, am I going to use is or am I going to use are? Well, I'm going to use is because it's one thing. So choice 3 is wrong because we're making this needlessly plural. We're talking about the mixture, so we use singular words to describe it. We don't use plural words. If I were to change it is into they are, then the sentence would read, Michael uses a wooden spoon to vigorously stir the mixture until they are smooth. Again, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound right. The mixture until they are smooth. The mixture until it is smooth. It and is, we use it is to describe singular things. It is singular. They are plural. Okay? So again, singular mixture. One thing has to be singular. That leaves us with choice D as the correct answer just by process of elimination, but let's actually see why. Okay? Number 4 says, Granddad turns each pancake when they begin to bubble. Or sorry, when they start to bubble. Okay? While all 3 siblings get the table ready for a sweet, delicious breakfast. So 2 things here. The first thing, sweet and delicious are what we call adjectives. They describe a word. Whenever you have 2 adjectives, you must separate them with a comma. So in this case, when we insert a comma after sweet, we're actually inserting a comma between sweet and delicious, which are 2 words that are adjectives, and adjectives describe things. So yeah, just know that whenever you have 2 adjectives describing the same object, in this case breakfast, you must put a comma there because technically that's a list. 2 adjectives must have a comma between them. Finally, Granddad turns each pancake when they start to bubble. So we're talking about each pancake, each individual pancake, individual singular pancake, right? Because we're talking about singular pancakes, we can't use the word they because they refers to plural things, many things. So if he's turning individual singular pancakes, then we need to change they, which talks about multiple pancakes, into it, which talks about one pancake, all right? So moving on to the last grammar section, or last grammar problem. It asks us to move the answer into the box. There's only one error in construction. So again, we're looking for a sentence that had some sort of grammar mistake in it. Let's read it. It says that the blobfish, a creature that certainly resembles its name, is an unusual fish whose body is mostly composed of pink gelatinous flesh. Oh, notice here. Pink, comma, gelatinous flesh. Pink is an adjective. We're describing how something looks. Gelatinous is an adjective. We're describing how something looks. I'm not lying to you guys. These words and these rules exist, and we can see them in action here. So in the previous problem, we put a comma between two adjectives. Here, they also put a comma between two adjectives, okay? Anyways, I don't see any problem here, right? I don't see any run-on sentences. I don't see any fragments. I don't hear anything. This reads normally to me, okay? Sentence 2. It reads, because it has very few muscles and its density is close to that of water, the blobfish spends its life floating slightly above the ocean floor. Now, some of you guys may say, oh, well, this sounds wrong because we're talking about it, and I don't know what it is. And technically, you're wrong. We do know what it is because it's referring to the blobfish. Remember, indirect pronouns like it and they are good. You can start a sentence with it and they as long as whatever you're referring to occurred a sentence ago. We talked about the blobfish a sentence ago, so starting the sentence with it and they, which may sound vague, is grammatically correct. Okay? And then furthermore, we introduce the blobfish again in this sentence. So because we literally state what we're describing as it later on, this is grammatically correct. I don't see any other issues in this sentence, okay? Sentence 3. It must patiently wait for whatever edible matter might float by its mouth. Okay, again, even though this sounds vague, this is correct because it is referring to the blobfish, which we introduced in the previous sentence. And if I went up to my friend and I said, well, it, the blobfish, must patiently wait for whatever edible matter might float by its mouth, they'll understand what I'm saying. They're like, okay, fine, the blobfish just waits until things fall into its mouth. Weird fact to know, man, but thanks for the fun fact. Okay, so sentence 3 doesn't have any issues in it, right? We're not seeing any vague pronouns. We're not seeing any issues in tense, right? We're talking about a singular thing and we're keeping it singular, right? Just a blobfish. Finally, sentence 4 then has to have a problem, and I'm going to find it, right? Sentence 4 says that the blobfish's downturned mouth, slimy skin, and pale coloring caused them to be voted the world's ugliest animal in 2013. Whoa. We're talking about them, okay? But the subject of the sentence, what is them referring to? Well, it's causing them to be voted the world's ugliest animal. What animal am I talking about? Oh, I'm talking about the blobfish, right? Now, this sentence says the blobfish's downturned mouth. Am I talking about multiple blobfish or just one? For those of you that said multiple, you're actually wrong. Remember, apostrophe S does not mean there's multiple blobfish. This means possession. Apostrophe S is the same thing as saying of the blobfish. Property of the blobfish, right? So the blobfish's downturned mouth, this apostrophe S just means that the blobfish owns or has a downturned mouth, it has slimy skin, and it has pale coloring. So we're talking about the blobfish, but only one blobfish. And now it's referring to the blobfish as them. That's wrong, because we only have one blobfish. We're only talking about one blobfish. So this should be changed to it, because it is the singular version of them. So sentence 4, to answer this question, we just have to drag this into this box, and that's it. There's only one error, so that's all we had to do here. Now, how do you know when you have plural with apostrophes? Easy. The apostrophe will come after the S, not before it. This, the blobfishes, this is plural. So if it read the blobfishes with the apostrophe after the S, then yeah, it would be fine and grammatically correct to use them at that point. But we have to change this to it because we're talking about a singular blobfish, and when we talk about a singular object, we can't use they. And this is the end of the grammar section. So if you have any questions about grammar, please let me know in the comments down below. If you're interested in looking at the math or reviewing the math from this section, I already have a video uploaded on that. I'll link it in the description. Good luck to all of you studying. I believe all of you can do very well on the SHSAT. I hope you all get into your dream schools. Again, if you have questions, leave them in the comments down below. Good luck studying, and I hope you guys have a nice day.